Welcome to the We Hack Purple podcast, where each episode we meet someone new from the information security industry. And this season, season 3, is all about AppSec, Tanya's favorite topic. This episode is sponsored by Women's Society of Cyber WiCYS, and they are a completely awesome organization dedicated to getting way more women into information security, which is something that you know is close to my heart. I'm Tanya Janka. I'm your host. I'm old news. You already know me. But also for my guest. But wait, I'm not telling you about her yet. So Women Cyber WiCYS is having Women Cyber WiCYS Con 2023 on June 24th. And they also have the 10th annual Cyber WiCYS Awards happening the same day. And so you should head on down and check out their super awesome events and maybe potentially join their amazing organization. But and I have 2 more things. We have 2 new professors for We Hack Purple Academy, and I'm really, really excited to tell you about how Joe Gray and Ed Homouche are joining us. So Joe teaches open source intelligence gathering, and he's already put a bunch of courses into the academy. And literally right after I record this with Meghan, I'm going to click the publish button on Ed's practical TLS course. So please head on down to academy.wehackpurple.com and check out our new courses. Yes, Tanya did all the things she's supposed to do, but now she can get to the matter at hand, which is my guest, Meghan Jacquot. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and really awesome that WSC is sponsoring this. They're a great group that I'm a member of as well, and I've been to several of their Cyber WiCYS cons, so it is definitely a great event to check out.
They are amazing. Okay, so I met Meghan last month in Dublin, Ireland at OWASP Global AppSec, and I was just hanging around, total riffraff, in the lobby of the hotel, and I was waiting for my friend Vandana Verma to arrive. And then who walks in? Meghan. And then I was like, well, I'm hanging out. Maybe she'll be my friend. And I started talking to her. And then Kim Watt, I know I'm going to say her name wrong. I'm sorry, Kim Wetz. She was one of the keynotes, and then she walks in and I got to meet both of them. And then I was like, Meghan, did you know I have a podcast and that maybe you need to be on it? After enough persuasion and emails, she said, yes. Meghan, can you please tell my audience about yourself and all the amazing things you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Meghan Jacquot, just like Tanya said, and she's exactly right. We just ran into each other in the lobby for the conference and ended up chatting, which was awesome. And so a little bit about me. I'm someone who's always loved technology. I consider myself a tinkerer, a bit of a hacker, and I just like to figure out how things work, but also, sometimes you break them along the way too, as you're figuring out how they work too. I'm a security engineer at Inspective, which is a startup, and I really love that startup type energy, because we are all able to kind of share our ideas and then implement them and make them happen. We work really specifically on application security as well as web portal-based security. And so we do a lot of testing, pen testing, continuous testing, and then I do research about vulnerabilities, validation of those vulnerabilities or exploits, as well as automating them. So a bit of a research side of things, a bit of a scripting side of things. So I get to wear more than one hat, which I love. And it's one of those things that I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn. And when I learn something, I get excited about it. So I'm like, oh, I want to share this with other people. So I'm a frequent conference attendee as well as speaker, because I'm like, oh, I just learned something new. I want to share this with people. Or this is something I know a bit about. I want to share it with people, and maybe they don't know about it. So it's something that I really just enjoy quite a bit. And so it's, I was in Dublin because I was speaking at the conference about threat modeling, which is a topic that Tanya and I share and we're both really passionate about, and kind of being able to prepare for things. So that's something that I will kind of continue doing as well, going to various conferences and speaking. So if you are at an upcoming InfoSec conference, an OWASP conference, let me know, because I might be there as well.
Awesome. Don't you also volunteer with some pretty amazing organizations if you wanted to tell the audience about them?
Sure, I do. So I volunteer with a variety of organizations, both some that are focused in on breaking barriers for cybersecurity. So there's one called BBWIC Foundation. I'm a academic and research advisor for them. So I help people work on their CFPs, work on a first-time white paper, and I'm a board member with that. I am a SOC goon for DEF CON, so one of those red shirt wearing folks, helping make sure that everything goes as planned. And we have the goons and the humans, so making sure the humans are doing okay. I volunteer with Diana Initiative, so I help them with their social media efforts. So kind of understanding the different algorithms behind social media platforms, as well as promoting the event. And speakers, like, for example, Tanya will be a keynote speaker at the Diana Initiative in August, on August 7th, at the start of Hacker Summer Camp. I also help out with SANS. I've done writing a capture the flag for them, and I'm a CFP reviewer for OWASP. So in my vast spare time, I spend time doing a few different things. I like I was saying earlier, I really like to learn. So I'm both a mentor and a mentee for the Women in Cybersecurity organization WiCYS. And I'll be speaking upcoming at the 2023 conference about how we threat model a conference. So it would be a co-facilitated workshop with Sumara Williams and Jessica Robinson.
So this was the thing I wanted to start out with, dear listeners and viewers. So Meghan and I started chatting, and she was saying, oh, I'm doing this workshop for WiCYS, and it's about how to threat model a conference. And I thought she meant like what could go wrong from the conference organizer perspective. But what she meant was attending a conference as a woman. And this really struck home for me because I used to be a professional musician and I would tour, and I had an incident happen while I was on tour before where like some things happened, and I realized I didn't even know how to call 911 equivalent in that country. And I was like, I need to like brush up on this stuff before I go places. So then I started traveling independently to all these different countries I don't know about, where the customs are not always the same. The laws can be quite different. And I had to work really hard to learn how to keep myself and my teammates safe. And so then she told me she was doing a whole, so you tell us anything you want about this without spoiling your talk. Sorry.
So the origins of the idea were Sumara and I were out for a walk. And so we were both at RSA last year. And we were walking just to get some like fresh air in the city in San Francisco. And I was thinking about, when we register for a conference, we're given a badge, and the badge says our name on it. And so when we leave the conference space, we're advertising a number of things. You're advertising that you're probably not local to the city. You might be, but you're probably not. You're advertising that you attended a conference. You're also advertising your name. So if someone wanted to do some social engineering and yell your name, if they caught that, and be able to kind of catch your ear and have you stop to maybe do some like physical attack around like potentially like stealing like your bag that might have a computer in it, for example, that could be something that you could have maybe people doing an attack from that type of thing. So I was just kind of thinking through all these different things. And I was also thinking through, the conference had a specific app that you had to register for in order to show that you had your COVID vaccinations at that time. And so I was thinking, hey, over 30,000 people are going to download this app and then have that on their phone. That's a really nice attack vector for a threat actor to think through, well, what are the vulnerabilities on this app that all these CISOs are going to have, that all these CTOs are going to have, right? You think of like the leadership folks that go to RSA, or even maybe an engineer has it, because some of the most recent breaches were because engineers were breached, right? And so it was going in from that piece, and okay, let me steal all of the access to this node because now I have the engineer at level access. So I was thinking about this, like, there's one app that everyone downloads, and you had an option to not download it, but it was less convenient, right? So security, right? With that piece where it's like convenience versus that access. And so I personally decided not to download the app because I was thinking just from an attack vector perspective and having that on a personal device. And so I just went in person and showed my physical card, but I could see almost no one was there doing that. So very few people did that. And so it just kind of started that thought process of like, what are the different choices that I make for digital security, for personal physical security? What are choices maybe that a conference setting takes? And how does that mix in together for the end user, the conference attendee? And particularly as a woman thinking about physical safety in certain areas, maybe there's an evening event, like we both went to the happy hour that was hosted at OWASP Dublin, right? So I thought through, what time am I going to leave? I'm just going to have one drink. I'm going to leave when it's still light enough outside that I feel comfortable walking back to the hotel. That it was about a mile walk, so really nice walk. But you just kind of start thinking through, like, maybe I would take a car for that, for physical safety purposes and such. So I'm going to keep an eye on my drink, make sure nothing gets added to it. And so all of that thought, spurring all that up, led to this idea for this conference talk as a workshop that we are delivering at WiCYS Women in Cybersecurity. And unfortunately, it won't be recorded, but we will have all the files. So I'll be sharing those with Tanya. So if people want to review the slides, if people want to review the activities, we're going to have a variety of different things that the workshop attendees will be doing. So they'll be working on 2 different storylines of helping someone decide what things that they need to think through before they choose a conference and once they've attended. We'll have a decision matrix. We will have a risk assessment with likelihood and impact that people can do about the different choices and do some choice ranking. And we're also going to have a bit of if you want to threat model out the different threats and kind of arrange those in a visual way. So those are going to be different components to it. And one final piece to it is doing OSINT, open source intelligence searching about yourself. So thinking about what your personal digital footprint is and where that appears. And, maybe certain apps are gathering data about you and you're checking your privacy settings to downgrade those and make sure that you have the highest privacy and the least exposure possible.
That's awesome. I used to, so I helped found an international nonprofit called WOSEC, Women of Security, and they did a lot of less organized things than WiCYS and Women's Cyber Jitsu. And one of the things that we started doing was, because I was doing it, is we would have like this women's coffee or breakfasty, whatever meetup, either right before the conference started or the evening before. And we would do that so all the women could meet each other, and then you could attend the rest of the event together. Because the first international conference I went to was OWASP AppSec EU in Dublin, Ireland in 2016. And I remember I got there and I was like, oh my God, I don't know anyone except my friend Nancy. And then I met Nicole, Tiffany, and all these other people, and we just palled around and did everything together. And I felt perfectly safe because I had this giant gang of ladies, and Christian, our friend Christian too. And having all these people made me feel really safe. So I was like, oh, the next time I go to a conference, I'm going to write a bunch of other people who are speaking there and say, hi, I'm Tanya. Can we hang out and be like buddies? And then I felt more safe. And so then one day I was like, well, why don't we just have one for all the women? Yes. And Megan, I can't tell you how exciting it is on like the second day of the conference in the afternoon to see pairs or like sets of 3s women that clearly met at the coffee we arranged, all hanging out together, laughing and happy. And I'm like, yes, that's a friendship forming right there.
I love it.
And then they're having a way more fun at the conference because they've made friends, but also like someone knows where they are. And if they don't show up, so they never come back from the bathroom or whatever, someone's like texting like, hey, where are you? What's going on? And so it leads to better outcomes, let's say. And so when you told me you were doing this, I was like, yes. And you had a lot of good points, like deciding which conference has better safety. Mm-hmm. Like it would never occur to me to be like, well, yeah, I tell a lot of people about safety at DEF CON. I've had some stuff happen at DEF CON and people are like, well, how are you treated at this conference? I'm like, if you're the keynote speaker at the conference, everyone's really nice to you. But I believe you and I discussed this. We want every single woman to be safe, not just the women that are on the stage.
Yeah. Yep. So regular attendees, volunteers, everyone should feel safe in all these spaces because we're all professionals in the security industry. So we shouldn't be treating someone differently or being less respectful because of their gender.
Yeah. So all the genders, all the folks, everyone included, all of them, including the men, getting treated with respect, 100%. I like the idea of how you walk them through picking and pre-planning some of their security as well. So this will be a workshop, and we can't attend it because it's sold out, because it's awesome. But if you go to the show notes, so if you go to wehackpurple.com, click on podcasts, and then look for Meghan. She's the only podcast guest so far we've had named Meghan, but you could also look for Jacquot as well if you want to. But basically, we'll have this and a bunch of other links, and obviously you want to immediately click on follow and subscribe on all of her stuff. I have more questions. So
Definitely.
we talked about the idea of doing cyber for good and being a good cyber citizen. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you probably can tell that I'm someone who likes to give back to community, and so that's a core value of mine is being able to reach out and share with community resources, good intentions, positivity. So it's part of my mindset. Not necessarily that I'm 100% optimist. I'd say more of a realist, but I a lot of times choose to see the good and assume good intentions. And so I think that relates back to some of the work that I'm doing with my company, Inspective, where we do what we would kind of consider cyber for good. And we call it, if you see something, say something. So one of the things that I'm working on is automating our scanner even further with different vulnerabilities. So looking for specific signatures, how to fit those into it. And then we test that against various DNS records. And so this allows us to see, is it working? Are we getting positives, false positives? But these are just lists that exist. And so they're people that may not be our clients. And so what we do is if we ever have a positive hit, we reach out to that organization, and not in like a sales tactic. Like I'm not on the sales team. And it's more of this is what we found. If you'd like to meet with us, we can explain it to you further, because we don't want to just include all the different things. Like imagine it's like an exposed Git repo for their source code for their app, right? So we don't want to include all of that information in an email because it could be going across as plain text. We're not sure if maybe their email has some exposure to it. So we include enough to show like it's serious, it's a real thing. We're real people. We're not asking you for like money. So it's not like a ransomware, like give us money and now we'll tell you what the thing is. But if they want to meet with us, we'll explain it. And usually they're meetings that go between 5 minutes and 20 minutes. So they're super short. I'm usually the technical subject matter expert on the call, and I share screen. I say, this is what we found, and we'll be sending you in a secure way. If you have a PGP key, great. If you don't, we can use like send safely. And we'll be sending you in a secure manner, a 2-page report that just has screenshots of the details. If you'd like to know more about what we do, we're happy to tell you. But if you don't, that's it. That's the call. And it's just kind of like a cyber for good. It's an outreach. And we found that sometimes it leads to clients way down the line. Sometimes it doesn't, especially if they're universities, if they're hospitals. So security may not be as much of a focus, may not be as much in the budget. But they now know there's this one thing that was out there. And especially when I see it and if there's credentials in there, it's really one of those things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm seeing this and sharing it. So then they can cycle through those creds if they are active in use, or they can say, oh no, we aren't using those anymore. We've confirmed that. Great. Let's just tighten up that. Maybe it's an env file and a YAML file for that. And so they just need to tighten up that endpoint and switch that over to private facing.
That is wonderful. I don't know if you've heard of the term, not bug bounty, but beg, B-E-G, beg bounty.
Yes, beg bounty people. So irritating. Yeah.
We Hack Purple got our first beg bounty today. So for the listeners and viewers that don't know what that is, it's where someone writes you and they're like, I found a vulnerability in your site and I want you to give me money and then I will tell you about it. And it is, it's not quite extortion, but it's like flirting with this extortion. And I was like, that's a SaaS product, dum-dum. That's not even my product. And it says right on what it's hosted, but also block. So I like the idea that you're like, we found something, we'd like to tell you about it. We're not going to charge you money. We also offer awesome services, and clearly we're good at it because we found this, but you could just have I like the idea, because there are probably lots of people out there where they do find stuff and they're not allowed to share it, right? Like, I've definitely heard of instances of this where you find things and it's like, well, they're not a client, so we don't care. And it's like,
Yeah. And that's just like painful because it's like, I understand like developing proprietary knowledge. I 100% understand that and wanting to protect your proprietary knowledge. But if you see something and there's an imminent attack, it's like to know that and then not being able to say something because that's the policy of your org, that's really hard. Like I would find that hard to go to sleep at night. Like where it's like one of those situations where you want people to be more secure as a security industry professional. And so you want to be able to share that if you find that. But if you are not able to because of NDAs of your company, because of the practices, then that is, sad.
it is sad. I attended a talk by a person I won't mention the company, but they're cool and that's fine. And she was saying that her job was to like dig around in the dark web a lot. And she's like, I have found murderers for hire and sent the information to the police. And like, I don't know what came of it past then, but I feel good that I did the thing. And she interestingly informed us that there were no, at that point, murderers for hire that she was aware of in Canada. She's like, there's a lot in America. It's terrifying. And she was like, apparently no one wants to pay people to murder people in Canada. Isn't that great? And I was like,
yeah.
yes.
When
oh my gosh, horrified that exists.
Yeah. I think it's a thing called violence as a service, actually. And so I was just listening to a podcast about it not too long ago. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Click Here podcast. So they do a weekly episode that's usually about 20-30 minutes on different topics related to InfoSec and privacy. And they had one somewhat recently that was on violence as a service and being able to hire people to then do physical violence, like be it like using like a brick to go into someone's house, like bricking their house, or Molotov cocktails or murder.
Oh my gosh, how terrifying!
Yeah.
Like I would, we need to make jobs for these people that are better. There's been lots of talk about like redirecting some of the funds for police to more community programs and more outreach and more of all these other things that it's like, well, let's stop the person from joining the gang in the first place. Let's stop the person from having their absolute best opportunity for making a decent living be either in crime or sex trade, etc. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts, but I am very good at getting off topic with you, so I'm going to try to drag us back. Everyone's like, Tanya, please talk about security. So when you and I were talking before, so she like just briefly mentioned, horizontal and vertical threat modeling. And I was like, what does that mean? Please tell me more, Megan. Tell me all the things. Would you mind explaining these terms?
Yeah. And so the basic sense is thinking about things from like a business model. So if we think about vertical threat modeling, it would be thinking through one organization and then all the different aspects that go into connecting to that organization. So you might be B2B, might be B2C, might be B2B to B2C, et cetera, right? So depending on what type of services you're providing, what type of clients you have, you're going to have people using your programs, using your apps, et cetera. And how are they connecting in? So like, how are your clients connecting in? And then how are third parties connecting in? Maybe you have an open API that people are using those endpoints. And so vertical threat modeling would be thinking about not just your infra, not just your org, but all the different connecting points that go up and down, and also how your employees are connecting in too, right? Because it's not just like you, the one single security professional. I hope not. You probably have a team, hopefully. But then there's other people who are connecting in, and how are they accessing different pieces and prod staging, et cetera. So that would be more of the vertical style. And then horizontal would be that you're looking at business alikes. So let's say you are a fintech organization that has a B2B app that works on billing for MSPs or something like that, right? And so you would then look, if you're threat modeling for this org, you would look at, well, what are other fintech orgs that have a similar style doing, and what are attack vectors for those orgs? Maybe very frequently a specific ransomware gang is attacking them. Maybe Hive, although it seems like they're more out of commission right now based off of some stings that just occurred. But oftentimes one group will resurface as another group. So let's say like Hive is frequently using RDP to get into all these different fintech organizations. How are you as an individual organization shoring up those connecting points? Because we're seeing this pattern that other group alikes, very similar business model to you, are having attacks with this method. So how do you make sure that you are now not the lowest hanging fruit for the next attack? So looking at business alikes, looking at attack vectors, and threat modeling that out for commonalities and patterns.
Isn't that cool? No, I'm very interested in threat modeling, and also I'm noticing your amazing book that you have there. I have the same book. Dun, 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 Threats, what every engineer should learn from Star Wars. I haven't watched Star Wars though. So please don't disown me. Don't just hang up, Megan. Please, there's hope for me.
I'm such a nerd. I was in a club in middle school that was called The Force. and we used to read Star Wars books and then do comparison between like the books and the movies, because there can be very big divergence, and there's lots and lots of books. There's hundreds of books. So I've seen all of them, seen them in the right order, seen them in a different order. But yeah, definitely a nerd for Star Wars. More so Star Wars than Star Trek, but my husband's super into Star Trek. So yeah, I love the time travel episodes and like the multi-universe ones. So he usually picks out some of those for me, and we watch those ones.
I make a lot of nerdy Star Trek jokes in my talks and training. For those who are listening and not viewing, we are talking about the new Adam Showstack book that is about threat modeling, but he compares a lot of the things to Star Wars. However, he has assured me personally that if you have not seen Star Wars, you will still understand the book, and that is okay. And he didn't even disown me as a friend, so that's pretty good.
And I also will not disown you too.
Thank you.
It's okay to have different fan things, right? Like different people have the thing that they like. So, but yeah, it's an epic commitment to make if you've never seen any of it, for sure, because it's a lot. Have you seen Picard, like that Star Trek spinoff show?
Yes,
I really enjoyed that quite a lot.
I am a weird person where I didn't really watch TV till I was 30 years old. So I watched it a little bit when I was a small child, but basically one day I was just like, I don't have time for this. As a child, I was just like, this is so boring. And so I'm not very good at like sitting still, watching something till the end, actually seeing a whole series. I'm not, but I do watch some TV sometimes, which is a huge improvement from never watching any ever. People would make a joke from, and I'd be like, what?
Don't get the reference.
So you and I talked about as well, like, so Megan and I are both speaking at RSA.
Woo.
The I is doing a happy dance if you're just listening. So we both attended the speaker prep session, and there is obviously a fantastically amazing speaker coach where she told us about interest span versus attention span. Did you want to maybe tell them?
Yeah. I really liked that dichotomy that was given, because it's one of those things where Tanya was even just saying, like, she struggles sometimes to like sit still for certain things. I'd imagine if there's something that you're really interested in, you're probably very focused on it. And I think that's very illustrative of the interest span versus the attention span. So over time, we've seen that studies have shown that attention span time has gone down. So it's getting lower and lower, but that can get mitigated if you have something that grabs people's attention and then keeps their attention. And so that's what we call then the interest span. And so one speaker that was really, really good at this, that I've done some research of his work, is Steve Jobs. He would always have things in acts of 3. And then he would often have like a visual component to it, and interactive, like reveal. and really gaining people's attention and appreciation for what it was that he was presenting. And so I think that, for those of you out there who maybe are looking to work on some of your speaking techniques, thinking through how you're engaging the audience. I often end up bringing different things that help aid in an analogy. So the talk that I gave at OWASP Dublin was about wearing multiple hats like we all do, and using OWASP Top 10 as ingredients and threat modeling as seasoning to kind of figure out all those pieces and help it so that you can maybe align your hats so you're wearing just a few fewer hats. And so I actually brought different chef hats, and I had them laid out on the table. And then at one point, I stacked them all on top of each other to kind of be illustrative of trying to wear fewer hats. And so that can be an example of something you can do that helps engage an audience, because, it's not very typical. Sometimes people just stay the whole time behind a podium. There's not always something that's up front. I know if you come to my RSA talk, there will be some special things there too that I won't give away what those are yet. But the talk is themed about islands, and it's about being on an island and how we can threat model and work together as a team so that we're not all alone on an island, essentially. And so we think through what might be some island themed things, those might be appearing as part of my talk. But yeah, I think that it's also the energy that you bring to the talk you give, right? If you're really interested in the topic that you're speaking to, that can really showcase itself to the audience as well. And I was saying earlier that I both really love to learn and share what I've learned. That goes into my speaking at conferences as well. So it's like, I've learned this new topic and I want to share it with you. Or here's this cool thing. Let's dive into it together. So yeah, I think that's kind of a big part about the interest span is how we showcase our own interest. And I think you were part of it last year. Maybe you did Pancakes Con, right?
Yes, I did Pancakes Con, and I talked about all my gardening and growing food and how you can grow food too.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really good example. If you've never been to that one, that's a completely virtual con where half of the talk is about a topic in information security, and then half of the talk is about a passion project that person's sharing and maybe teaching you how to do. And I think if you were to view the energy of the people presenting at that can be really a great example if you're trying to look at ways to engage and have more interest span in your talks that you're giving.
Yes, ever since that conference, I had people write me. They're like, how's your greenhouse, Bertha? Because I named them the Enterprise Bertha in the nursery.
Nice.
But then we took them apart and we're building a mega greenhouse.
Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing photos of that when that happens.
Yeah, I bought a small farm last year. And so there are a lot of pictures of me and things I grew. I'm like, look at this. Look how awesome it is. I did that.
You made it happen.
And nature and the sun. And, I had some help. So first of all, if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, Meghan's talking about all these cool things she's doing, in the show notes, I'm going to have a link to her talk from Dublin. I'm going to have a link to just basically everything she's talked about, her social media, so that you can follow her in a friendly and non-creepy manner all over the internet. But there's one more thing I want to talk about before we wrap up. And it's mentorship. So you and I are both super passionate about this, and there's a program coming up, and I was hoping you could talk about it.
Yeah, so every single year, WiCYS Women in Cybersecurity has a mentorship program. It's a 9-month-long program, and it's a guided program. So there's content given. I've been both a mentor and a mentee in the past, and I plan to do that again this year. So I've already sent in my interest form for that. And so no matter what time of the year you're listening, it is either the deadline has hopefully not passed yet, but if it has passed, you can look for it later on because it is an annual program. And usually they have a ratio of between 3 to 5 mentees to 1 mentor, and you do group mentorship and then some one-on-one if you want to do that too. And they try to group people with like kind of some similarities with the goals you're working on. Like if you're all mid-career, they try to group you together, or early career, or a student. And it is for members who are in women's cybersecurity, WiCYS. So if you're not a member, you can join. And they have a lot of different discounts for veterans, students, and also just a regular industry membership fee, which is very reasonable. And then then you can become a mentor for it, or mentee. And then if you wanted to become a mentor, it's really for anyone. So the organization says women in cybersecurity, but if you look at the mission, it's for a more inclusive cyber. And so men are part of the organization. Many non-binary people are part of the organization. So it's not just for like one single gender at all. It's for people who want to bring more diversity and inclusivity into cybersecurity.
I can get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I feel like our sponsor also is like, yeah, mentor all those ladies.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah. And WSC also has mentorship programs as well as classes too. So they have a variety of different workshops and classes that they offer throughout the year. So there's lots of opportunities for more formal mentorship if you're looking for that. In various programs that exist. And I kind of like that, like, I might have like a one-on-one conversation with someone and I'm helping mentor them, answering a couple questions, but I think it's nice to be part of more of a formal program.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm going to briefly say thank you to our sponsor, Women Cyber Jitsu. And I also want to, anyone that's listening, if you want to see all the other We Hack Purple podcast episodes, you can hit that friendly subscribe button on the bottom. You can click that thumbs up thing if you're on YouTube. You can subscribe to our newsletter at newsletter.wehackpurple.com. See all the things that we do. If you like this, you'll like a lot of the other stuff we do. I did it. Checked all the boxes. All right. I know. Meghan, this has been super awesome.
Yeah.
This has been really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed myself too. Yeah, very great chatting with you.
So I want to thank you for coming on, but first I want to ask you one more thing, and that is, if people want more Meghan, where can they follow you, read about you, listen to you, all the things?
I'm very happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can search me by my name. I also have Carpe Diem by my name because I really enjoy trying to seize the day and spend the most of our time here on Earth. You can reach me through Twitter, Carpe Diem Tech, and the E is a 3. I'm also on Mastodon, Carpe Diem Tech at ioc.exchange. So very happy to connect with people and help where I can as well.
Yes. Thank you for helping me remember. I wanted to ask you about your book project. Okay. So we're going to wrap up for real. Again, thank you to Women Cyber Jitsu for sponsoring this episode. And thank you so much, Meghan, for being on here. It was worth pestering you in the lobby of the hotel. Like, hey, you, be my friend.
I'm very glad we're friends.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners and viewers. Without you, well, first of all, this podcast would not be very exciting if no one watched or listened to it. But thank you for being a part of We Hack Purple. We, the whole team, there are 4 of us now, really appreciate you, plus the 12 people on our volunteer team, and also just like all the professors that we're bringing on. All of us, thank you for you supporting us forever. And with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, Meghan. And let's say goodbye to everyone. Bye. See you next time on the We Hack Purple podcast.